you should take those into account as well.
Absolutely. So our current work around compaction and nitrogen is showing that on compacted soils we're using nitrogen really inefficiently. While we see yield responses to N on compacted soils, it's basically just enough to cover the cost of the N. And where we're deep ripping compacted soils, we're seeing a profitable response to the ripping and the N. So we're seeing a positive interaction there where your profit gain from applying N increases as the amount of N you apply, because that gap just gets bigger and bigger, because you are actually seeing a reasonable response to that N you apply once you remove that compaction constraint.
Thanks, Craig.
Cool. Some more questions? Got one.
Daniel, just with your lupin rotation, I've always found that after a lupin crop, especially a heavy one, I have trouble with increased non-wetting. I'm just wondering, you have that same experience and what you do to overcome it?
Yeah, that is a difficult one for me to answer because we don't really have non-wetting soils on the farm beyond a couple of small pockets. What have you found that works for you?
Usually it's a very poor lupin crop. Yeah, I don't do any wetters at this stage, and if anything, I've gone away from growing some lupin crops and gone back to Ceredella pasture or a good pasture.
Yeah. One thing we've found with lupins, because of the large seed, we've had less mortality on like a mediocre break. So if we get less, somewhere between, say, or false break I should say, so somewhere between like 2 and 8 millimetres, where the canola establishment might be severely reduced, at least the lupin seems to be able to have a second go, or at least have enough energy in the large seed to be able to make it to the surface. So I guess my point is, yeah, if you can manage somehow to get enough moisture around that seed using a wetting agent perhaps, that'd probably help. There'd probably be more people in the West Midlands group who might have experience in that rather than from our way. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and I'll just have one more question for Daniel. How do you maintain nerves of steel when when canola prices are looking so good and you could drop a fair bit more lupins out potentially and put more canola in? How do you kind of keep that balance in your rotations?
Yeah, it's you have to be disciplined. So it's a discipline that I've learnt, I guess, from the generation before me. But it does fluctuate a little bit, Nathan, especially in the last year or two. So we've, like this year, for example, we've gone from being around 15% back to being closer to 10%. So we did put in a little bit more canola to take advantage of that canola price and the early break again this year. But we just take a really long-term view where, you know, I've got no doubt that if you looked at a 3 to 5 year period, the wheat on wheat rotation continuously would probably return the highest profit overall, but we're looking beyond 5 years, and although we're taking a hit on profit year in, year out on those hectares compared to wheat or canola, in the very long term, we see that there's more benefit around sustainability of having lupins in the rotation, particularly with weed management. So that's a big one. So if we want to be here in 10 and 15 years with reasonable weed seed banks, then that's really why we look to have a certain amount of lupins in the program. So yeah, we kind of set a certain number of hectares or percentage on ourselves, and we really try and find those and stick to it. Last year we had a good amount of lupins in, and this year we're really thankful for that because they've provided a lot of background nitrogen in a high nitrogen year. So that this year is an example of when it works in our benefit. And then this year, like I said, we've reduced our lupin footprint a little bit and having heard from David today about the exciting fertiliser prices we have to look forward to next year, we'll be wishing we had a few more hectares in. So you win some, you lose some. We're looking at the real long game and trying to remain disciplined.
Yep, cool. So if there's no more questions... Oh,
Can I just ask a question of Daniel? Have you looked at other legumes for your heavier soils?
Not beyond some small-scale trials. Yeah, so we moved into some heavier soil types just in the last couple of years. Before that, we were really medium and light. We grew last year just in a trial site, some field peas, beans, and chickpeas, and a few other bits and pieces, but nothing that's so exciting that we want to jump in the deep end and have a crack at this point. So, yeah, we'll just keep having a look at what's out there and deal with that as it comes.
Yep, cool. One more question.
If I could make a quick comment. Just in preparing this talk, Rob Sands and Mike Monaghan were talking about the potential to investigate opportunity of lupins in low rainfall years. So playing the season, we're relying on stored soil water to plant canola. So while the price is, even when the price isn't high, production enables that positive operating profit from canola, and the real issue with lupin is the low price. So potentially you reduce the loss by growing the lupin in the drier seasons. So lower yielding, admittedly, and less operating profit in that given year, but over the longer term, that's probably a better way to have it. And thinking about the sclerotinia that Daniel's spoken of, that de-risks sclerotinia for that crop type as well. We're picking up good responses to fungicides for canola, sclerotinia and blackleg, but not so much with lupins. So if the lupins end up in that drier cycle, the opportunity cost is reduced and potentially the production cost too. So they're having a look at that on the back of this meeting.
Yeah.
So just a last one from me, perhaps to you again, Dave, along the same kind of lines. You put up there the gross margins for various crops. Obviously, that's one of the drivers of what you would advise your clients to grow. But can you pick out some of the other drivers behind what they'd include in rotations in terms of farming systems? Like, can you really pick out, is it weeds, is it disease, is it something else, or is it really all bundled together? Weeds drive the system for dryland cropping, so that's big, and nutrition as well. So they're the two big costs, and arguably the fungicide spend is still discretional based on what we do rotationally. I think it's all linked in together. Our own pests sit beyond that as well, particularly with things like Russian wheat aphid coming and chlorpyrifos being challenged as well. So there's other risks that could come on with pests going forward. So yeah, I think it's all linked in together. One big thing about the lupins, we're spending a bit of time on that, is the value of that organic nitrogen just on these really coarse sands, these low cation exchange sands. That's really valuable, because we don't want to be pouring really expensive fertiliser onto those soils that aren't going to hold on to it as well. So this area will be the last area to stop growing lupins.
Yep. Cool. Okay. Well, let's put our hands together and thank our panel for today, for this session.